In the pale glow of a computer screen, a husband scrolls through endless digital memories, each flicker a fragment of a life once shared. It's a late November night in 2018, and as the clock ticks toward midnight, he stumbles upon a Facebook story, a ghost from the past that sends a chill down his spine. The face that appears is unmistakably hers, his wife missing since 2003, captured in a fleeting moment, alive and well. Her familiar smile, unchanged by time, ignites a dormant hope and an unquenchable thirst for answers. Before that fateful night, she was known as Emily Thompson, a radiant soul whose laughter could light up the darkest of rooms. Born and raised in Maplewood, a small town where everyone knew each other's name, Emily was the kind of person people gravitated towards. She was a dedicated nurse, a loving sister, and a devoted wife. Known for her compassion and tireless dedication, she spent her days caring for others and her nights dreaming of a family of her own. In the summer of 2003, Emily was at the cusp of a new beginning. She and her husband Ben had just purchased their first home, a quaint cottage nestled along the outskirts of town. It was the perfect setting for the life they envisioned, a place where their love could grow, unencumbered by the world outside. But destiny had other plans. It was a warm July evening when Emily vanished. She had planned a quiet dinner at home with Ben after her shift at the hospital. The table was set, her apron still hanging by the stove, a testament to her intentions. But when Ben returned home, Emily was gone. No note, no message. Just the unsettling quiet that filled the space where her laughter once echoed. The initial investigation was swift yet superficial. The local authorities, overwhelmed by the lack of evidence, chalked it up to a possible runaway or voluntary disappearance. But for those who knew Emily, the notion was inconceivable. She had no reason to leave, no hidden life or secrets to uncover. Her life was here with her family, her friends, her patients. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into years, hope waned, replaced by a gnawing despair. Ben, though heartbroken, refused to give up, his life becoming a relentless pursuit of answers. Yet each lead, each whispered rumor, only led to dead ends and disappointment. Then, on that November night in 2018, a single image shattered the silence of 15 long years. Ben's heart raced as he recognized the cafe in the background, a place Emily had always loved, thousands of miles from Maplewood. Could it be a cruel joke, a case of mistaken identity, or something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? With trembling hands, Ben picked up the phone, dialing 911. His voice, a mixture of hope and dread, cracked as he reported his discovery. The operator, sensing the gravity of his words, promised immediate action. As the call ended, a new chapter in this haunting mystery began, leaving all who were touched by Emily's life to grapple with the chilling question: what really happened to Emily Thompson? The air was thick with tension as the Maplewood Police Department swung into action. The dispatcher relayed Ben's urgent call to Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator known for his meticulous approach, but burdened by a caseload that often exceeded his capacity. The image Ben had found was sent to the precinct, and within minutes, Harris was on the phone with Ben, arranging to meet him immediately. As Ben sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Across the table, Detective Harris observed him carefully, noting the tremor in Ben's hands, the desperation in his eyes. Harris began with the basics, trying to piece together the timeline of Emily's last known movements. Ben recounted the evening she disappeared, his voice steady but haunted. He described her plans for dinner, the uncharacteristic silence that greeted him when he returned home. His recollections were vivid, each detail etched in his memory by years of longing and loss. The detective's questions were probing, searching for anomalies. Had Emily been acting differently? Was there anyone she might have confided in? Ben shook his head, reiterating Emily's contentment with her life, her dedication to her patients, her love for their home. Meanwhile, the precinct was buzzing. Officers were dispatched to re-interview neighbors and friends, hoping to uncover something that had been missed all those years ago. Yet, in the frenzied rush, critical errors began to emerge. The original case files were sparse, many of the initial interviews poorly documented. Witness statements had been discarded or lost, leaving gaping holes in the investigation's foundation. Back at the station, Detective Harris continued to press Ben for more information about the mysterious photo. The background was a European cafe, one Emily had mentioned in passing but never visited, as far as Ben knew. It was a place that could hold answers, or lead them further into uncertainty. The clock was ticking. In these early hours, every moment felt crucial. Friends and family began to gather at the Thompsons' home, their presence a mix of support and unspoken worry. Emily's sister, Sarah, was particularly vocal, her frustration with the police palpable. She had been one of Emily's closest confidants, and she was adamant that her sister would never disappear without a trace. As the hours stretched into a second day, the pressure mounted. Media outlets caught wind of the story, adding to the chaos with speculation and sensational headlines. The scrutiny was intense, and Detective Harris knew they were running out of time to maintain control of the narrative. Yet, in the midst of this maelstrom, a crucial lead was overlooked. A neighbor had reported seeing a strange car parked near the Thompsons' house the evening Emily disappeared. It was a small detail, easily dismissed amid the noise of false leads and dead ends. But for those first 48 hours, it remained buried beneath the weight of procedural missteps and assumptions. As the sun set on the second day, the case felt more precarious than ever. The team, despite their best intentions, was struggling to make headway. And as Ben sat alone in his living room, he realized that this new chapter might be just as painful and elusive as the last. But beneath his grief, a flicker of hope remained. Hope that the truth was still within reach, waiting to be uncovered. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Thompson living room, where Ben sat in silent contemplation. The room was filled with murmurs of concern and quiet conversations, but Ben's mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment he could remember from the days leading up to Emily's disappearance. He knew he had to hold on to that hope, fragile as it was. Meanwhile, Detective Harris paced the corridors of the precinct, frustration etched on his face. The clock was ticking, and with each passing hour the likelihood of finding Emily decreased. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something critical. The neighbor's report of the strange car gnawed at him, a loose thread begging to be pulled, yet buried beneath piles of more pressing leads, or so it seemed. Sarah, Emily's sister, was relentless in her pursuit of answers. She had spent the day rallying friends to distribute flyers, making sure Emily's face was known to the entire community. Her voice was a constant in the chaos, demanding updates, pushing for action. She refused to let her sister's case become another statistic. In the flurry of activity, a young rookie officer, Officer Martinez, quietly sifted through the growing stack of reports. He was new to the force, eager to prove himself, and as he scanned the documents he noticed inconsistencies in the timeline of Emily's last known movements. A receipt from a local gas station caught his eye, time-stamped just hours before Emily's supposed disappearance. It seemed out of place given the family's account. But the precinct was overwhelmed, the team stretched thin, and Martinez's discovery was momentarily set aside, overshadowed by more immediate demands. Yet this small discrepancy was a thread that, if tugged, might unravel the tangled narrative. Back at the Thompson home, a sense of helplessness pervaded the air. Ben, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, stepped outside into the cool night. He needed air, space to think. As he stood there, his phone buzzed. A message from a friend, someone who had seen the Facebook story and wanted to help. Inside, Sarah gathered the family, determined to keep the momentum going. "We can't let them forget about Emily," she insisted, her voice a mixture of resolve and desperation. "We have to keep pushing, keep searching." As the night wore on, Detective Harris finally returned to his desk, exhausted but unwilling to surrender to the mounting pressure. He picked up the neighbor's report again, this time with renewed focus. The description of the car, an older model sedan, dark and nondescript, was maddeningly vague. But it was a start. He knew they couldn't afford to let any detail slip through the cracks. As the first light of dawn broke, Harris made a decision. He called in Martinez, sensing the rookie's eagerness and fresh perspective might be exactly what they needed. "We're going to dig deeper," Harris said, determination in his voice. "No stone unturned." And so, As the third day dawned, the investigation took a new direction. The mistakes of the first 48 hours loomed large, casting a long shadow, but with every step forward, they edged closer to the truth. Somewhere, amidst the chaos and confusion, the answers waited, hidden in plain sight. As the sun rose on the third day, Detective Harris and Officer Martinez were already poring over the scant evidence they had. The gas station footage, although unsettling, was still uncorroborated by any other sightings or testimonies. They needed more, something concrete to guide them. In the meantime, Ben Thompson had taken to social media, posting every available image of Emily, pleading with the public for any information. Friends and strangers alike shared his posts, their reach spreading like wildfire. Each notification felt like a lifeline, a small glimmer of hope in the vast darkness that surrounded them. Back at the precinct, Harris and Martinez decided to revisit the first 48 hours, retracing every step. Mistakes had been made, they knew that. The initial response had been chaotic, hampered by a lack of clear direction and overwhelmed officers. Witnesses had been questioned, but the interviews were rushed, incomplete. One particular oversight gnawed at Harris. The neighbor's account of the mysterious sedan had been taken too lightly. They had assumed it was unrelated, a common oversight when the pressure mounts and resources dwindle. But now, with fresh eyes, Harris saw its potential significance. It was time to re-interview the neighbor, to dig deeper into those early hours when Emily's trail was still warm. Sarah, meanwhile, had mobilized the family, organizing searches and community meetings. Her resolve was unyielding, her determination a beacon for those who felt powerless. She knew the importance of these initial days, how quickly people moved on if there were no leads, no developments. As Harris and Martinez arrived at the neighbor's house, the air was tense with anticipation. The neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Jenkins, opened the door cautiously. Her eyes were tired, her demeanor wary. "We're sorry to bother you again, Mrs. Jenkins," Harris began, his tone gentle but firm. "But we need to revisit your account of the night Emily went missing." Mrs. Jenkins nodded, inviting them in. Her living room was a time capsule of a bygone era, filled with faded photographs and memorabilia. She sat them down, her hands steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I've been thinking about it, you know," she said, her voice a mixture of apprehension and clarity. "That car, it wasn't just parked there. I remember seeing someone inside, smoking." Martinez leaned in, his curiosity piqued. "Did you see their face? Anything that stood out?" Mrs. Jenkins shook her head slowly. It was dark, and the streetlight was out, but the way they were sitting, it was like they were waiting for someone. This new piece of information, though vague, added a new layer to the puzzle. Harris and Martinez exchanged a glance, understanding the potential implications. A waiting car suggested planning, intent. They needed to find that sedan. As they left Mrs. Jenkins's house, Harris's mind raced with possibilities. What if Emily's disappearance wasn't a random act? What if it was orchestrated, with precision and intent? The thought was chilling, yet it offered a new direction to pursue. Back at the precinct, Harris called for a meeting, bringing in all available officers. They needed to cast a wider net to find the sedan and identify its owner. The clock was ticking, and every second mattered, but as they delved deeper, another issue surfaced. The initial investigation had failed to secure all available CCTV footage from nearby businesses. Some tapes had been recorded over, their contents lost forever. It was a devastating blow, a reminder of the critical errors that plagued those early hours. Yet, amidst the setbacks, there was a newfound determination. The team was united, their focus sharpened by the stakes. They were racing against time, against the unknown, but they were not giving up. And somewhere in the shadows, the truth lay waiting, ready to be unraveled. As the team regrouped in the precinct's conference room, the atmosphere was tense but charged with a sense of purpose. Harris stood at the head of the table, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound as he laid out the strategy. "We're looking for a needle in a haystack," Harris began, the weight of the task evident in his voice. "But every detail matters. I want a list of every vehicle matching Mrs. Jenkins' description within a 10-mile radius. Check registration records, traffic cams, anything that might give us a lead." Martinez nodded, scribbling notes furiously. What about the community? Rumors, whispers. Sometimes they know more than they let on. Harris considered this. Good point. We need to talk to people, neighbors, shop owners, anyone who might have seen something unusual that night. The team dispersed, each member assigned a specific task, the urgency of their mission propelling them forward. But as the days turned into weeks, progress was painfully slow. The car, elusive as a ghost, remained unidentified. The community, once buzzing with speculation, had grown quiet, their initial interest waning as time passed. Rumors, however, had a life of their own. Whispers of a secret affair, of financial troubles, began to circulate. Fingers pointed at Emily's husband, David, who had been stoic and private in the face of public scrutiny. His silence was interpreted by some as guilt, and soon he became the prime target of the town's suspicions. "David's been acting strange," one neighbor confided to Martinez, her voice low, conspiratorial. "Always kept to himself, but after Emily disappeared, it's like he withdrew even more." "Did you ever see him with anyone else?" Martinez probed, careful not to lead the witness. The neighbor hesitated, then shook her head. "Not that I can recall, but you never really know someone, do you?" Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the pressure to make a breakthrough mounted. The investigation turned its gaze inward, scrutinizing David's alibi, his finances, his relationships. Yet every avenue seemed to lead to another dead end. His story held up, his accounts were clean, and no trace of infidelity could be substantiated. As the leads dwindled, so did hope. The case began to lose momentum, the initial fervor giving way to a creeping sense of defeat. Harris felt it keenly, a knot of frustration tightening in his chest. They were missing something, some critical piece that would unlock the mystery. But as the investigation hit a wall, a new whisper emerged from the edges of the community, a rumor that turned the spotlight away from David. A name, uttered softly, almost fearfully: Jake Thompson, a local drifter with a penchant for trouble. He had been in town the night Emily vanished, seen loitering near her street. Harris leaned back in his chair, the weight of this new possibility settling over him. Thompson was known to the police, his record peppered with minor offenses, but could he be capable of something as sinister as this? The truth felt closer, yet still maddeningly out of reach. As Harris and his team prepared to follow this new lead, the lingering question in the air was palpable. Had they finally found their suspect, or was this yet another false trail in a case growing colder by the day? Harris stared at the name on his notepad, the letters almost taunting him. Jake Thompson. He knew they had to tread carefully. Community rumors had led them astray before, but there was something in the way people spoke of Thompson, like they were holding back, fearing what might happen if they spoke too loudly. The following morning, Harris met with Martinez at the station. They exchanged a brief nod, understanding the gravity of what lay ahead. Martinez had already started digging, connecting dots that might lead them to Thompson's whereabouts. "He's got a reputation," Martinez began, her voice steady yet tinged with caution. "Petty theft, bar fights, nothing that screams murderer, but people are wary of him." Harris nodded, his mind racing. They needed more than reputation. They needed facts. "Let's see if we can track his movements around the time Emily disappeared. Maybe there's something we missed." As they delved deeper into Thompson's past, the picture that emerged was one of a man living on the fringes, never quite part of the community, yet always on its periphery. His alibi for the night of Emily's disappearance was shaky at best, a claim of having been out of town that no one could corroborate. The team canvassed the area, speaking to anyone who might have crossed paths with Thompson. Most were reluctant, sharing only the bare minimum, but a few mentioned his frequent visits to a local dive bar. It was there they hoped to find someone who might unlock the next part of the puzzle. At the bar, the atmosphere was dim and unwelcoming. Harris and Martinez approached the bartender, a grizzled man who seemed as much a fixture of the place as the worn-out stools. "Jake Thompson?" "Yeah, I know him," the bartender admitted, wiping a glass with a dirty rag. "He was here that night for sure, left around closing." "Did he say where he was going?" Martinez pressed, her gaze steady. The bartender shrugged. "Not really, but I heard him arguing with someone outside before he took off. Couldn't see who, though." As they left the bar, Harris's mind whirled with possibilities. The argument could be a crucial lead, but without knowing who Thompson had clashed with, they were still grasping in the dark. Meanwhile, back at the station, the clock ticked away, each second a reminder of how far they were from solving the mystery. Harris's frustration grew, the pressure to deliver answers to Emily's family weighing heavily on his shoulders. The town's whispers shifted focus again, their fleeting nature making them impossible to pin down. Some claimed to have seen Emily in the days following her disappearance, others believed she had simply run away from an unhappy life. Each rumor added layers to an already tangled narrative. The lack of concrete evidence was stifling. As time wore on, the initial surge of hope that accompanied the mention of Thompson's name began to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of futility. Harris sat at his desk, staring at the case file, the photographs of Emily's smiling face now haunting reminders of their failure to bring closure. The burden of another dead end loomed large, and he knew they were running out of time. The case was slipping through their fingers, one lead at a time, as the chill of an unsolved mystery settled over them. But as he closed the file for the night, a thought nagged at him. There was something they were missing, something that could turn the tide. And with that thought came a renewed determination to keep digging, no matter how cold the trail. The question remained, where would the next clue come from, and would it be enough to finally break the case wide open? The next morning, the sun barely crested over the horizon when Harris found himself back at the station, sipping a lukewarm coffee as he stared at the evidence board. Emily's disappearance was a puzzle with too many missing pieces, and the pressure to deliver was palpable. As he mulled over the scant clues, Martinez entered, her expression a mix of exhaustion and resolve. "Any breakthroughs?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Harris shook his head. "Nothing concrete, just more whispers and shadows." Martinez sighed, leaning against the desk. "The townsfolk are talking. They say Emily was seen at the old train station days after she vanished." "Another ghost sighting," Harris muttered. "We need more than rumors." Martinez nodded, but her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Still, it might be worth checking out. If nothing else, we'll be seen making an effort, keeping the community engaged." Harris knew she was right. The train station was a relic of the past, abandoned and forgotten, much like the leads in this case, but it was a thread, however thin, and they needed to follow it. Later that day, as they arrived at the derelict station, the air was thick with dust and the scent of neglect. Vines crept over the rusting tracks, and broken windows gaped like empty eyes. Harris and Martinez split up to search the area, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. Harris's thoughts drifted to Emily's family, how they clung to hope, how they deserved answers. It was a burden he couldn't shake. As he rounded a corner, he found Martinez standing still, staring at something on the ground. "Harris, over here." He approached, squinting at the faded graffiti scrawled on the station wall. Beneath it, a patch of dirt had been recently disturbed. Kneeling, he brushed away the loose soil, revealing a small battered diary. Martinez handed him a pair of gloves, and together they carefully opened the diary, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was cramped but legible, and the contents made Harris's pulse quicken. "Could this be Emily's?" Martinez whispered, the weight of the discovery hanging between them. Harris nodded slowly. "It's possible. We need to get this back to the lab, see if we can confirm it." But even as they turned to leave, a chill crept over Harris. The diary was a significant find, but it raised more questions than answers. Why was it here? And what secrets did it hold? Back at the station, the atmosphere was tense as they awaited the lab's analysis. Meanwhile, the community's rumors took on new life, each tale more outlandish than the last. Some whispered of a lover's quarrel, others of a dark family secret. The names of possible suspects floated to the surface: old acquaintances, former lovers, even distant relatives. Each one seemed plausible at first glance, but as Harris delved deeper, the connections unraveled. Alibis were checked, stories corroborated, and one by one suspects were eliminated. The investigation hit a wall, and the sense of futility grew. Harris and Martinez knew they were losing traction. The diary, despite its potential, had yet to produce a breakthrough, and the clock was ticking. As the day drew to a close, Harris sat in his office, the hum of the station loud in his ears. The weight of the unsolved case pressed heavily on him, but amidst the frustration, a new determination sparked. There was a missing piece somewhere in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. And as he closed his eyes, Harris knew that the answer lay not in the whispers of the past, but in the voices that were yet to speak. The question remained: who would break the silence, and when would the truth finally come to light? Years passed like pages torn from a calendar, each one fluttering silently to the floor, forgotten yet weighted with the absence of Emily. For her family, time did not heal. It merely stretched the wound, pulling it taut and raw, a constant reminder of their missing piece. Emily's mother, Joyce, found herself roaming the aisles of the local grocery store, clutching a list she could no longer read through tear-blurred eyes. Her routine was mechanical, yet every glance at the produce section conjured memories of Emily, insisting on fresh ingredients for the recipes she loved to create. At home, Joyce and her husband Tom dedicated a room to Emily's memory. It became a shrine filled with photographs, mementos, and the scent of her favorite flowers, lilies, which Tom replaced weekly. They clung to hope with the tenacity of shipwrecked sailors, refusing to believe their daughter was lost forever beneath the waves of time. Meanwhile, the town of Maplewood adjusted to the absence in its own quiet way. Emily's disappearance morphed into local folklore, whispered among teenagers daring each other to recount her story on moonless nights. For the older generation, it became a cautionary tale, a reminder of life's fragility and the shadows lurking beneath its surface. Yet for all the tales and whispers, the case file rested untouched in the police archives, gathering dust, a grim testament to the passage of time. But Joyce and Tom were not content to let the silence win. They hired private investigators, sparing no expense in their quest for answers. The investigators combed through witness statements, re-interviewed acquaintances, and followed leads that twisted and turned like a labyrinth with no exit. Each new hire brought a flicker of hope, only to leave them with empty hands and heavier hearts. In the community, the yearly anniversary of Emily's disappearance became a poignant ceremony. The vigil, held in the town square, was a gathering of those who remembered. Candles flickered in the evening breeze, illuminating faces etched with sorrow and solidarity. The event was both a protest against forgetting and a plea for the truth to finally surface. Tom often took to the podium, his voice a mixture of defiance and desperation. "We will not forget. We will not stop searching for the truth. For Emily." His words resonated, but as the crowd dispersed each year, the sense of futility grew, a creeping vine that wrapped around the town's collective heart. In a small office, far from the public eye, Harris too grappled with the passage of time. The case had become a personal crusade, a puzzle that haunted his dreams and filled his waking hours with relentless questions. The diary, though a promising lead, had yielded little more than Emily's inner thoughts, hopes and fears that painted a picture of a young woman on the cusp of life, now frozen in time. Harris often wondered if the answers lay not in the pages of the diary, but in the unspoken words of those who knew her. He spent countless evenings revisiting interviews, listening for the slip of a tongue, the telltale hesitation that might unveil the truth hidden beneath polite facades. And then one evening, as he replayed an old interview, something caught his attention, a fleeting reference to a name he had seen only once before, buried in the diary's margins. It was a name spoken in passing, yet there was a weight to it, a significance he had overlooked. Harris leaned forward, his heart quickening. Could this be the thread that would unravel the silence? As he reached for his phone to call Martinez, he felt a familiar chill. The past was a patient hunter, and its prey was finally within reach. The question remained, would they be ready to face what lay in the shadows? Harris dialed Martinez's number with a sense of urgency that had eluded him for years. The unanswered questions were no longer whispers in the back of his mind. They were loud, insistent demands for action. As the phone rang, Harris could almost hear the echo of Emily's voice, lost to time, yet still hauntingly present. When Martinez picked up, Harris wasted no time. "I found something. A name. It's connected to Emily's diary and an old interview. We need to dig deeper." Martinez's curiosity piqued, and he agreed to meet Harris the following morning. As Harris hung up, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, a feeling that had been so foreign for so long. The years had not been kind to those Emily left behind. Her parents, once vibrant and full of life, had grown weary and gaunt, their eyes shadowed with the weight of unspoken grief. They had poured their hearts into a private investigation, hiring detectives, following leads, and even consulting psychics in desperate moments. Each dead end felt like another nail in the coffin of hope. Tom, Emily's husband, had become a fixture at the local library, poring over case files and news clippings, hoping to unearth a detail everyone else had missed. The community had rallied around him initially, organizing search parties and vigils. But as time dragged on, the fervor waned, and life resumed its relentless pace. New families moved into the neighborhood, unaware of the tragedy that had once gripped the town. For the community, Emily became a symbol of what was lost, a cautionary tale whispered to children about the dangers lurking in the world. Her case, once the talk of every diner and coffee shop, faded into the background, overshadowed by new scandals and crises. Yet for Tom, her absence was a constant presence, a ghost that haunted every moment. He often found himself talking to her in the quiet hours of the night, imagining her responses, her laughter. He kept her things as they were, a shrine to a life interrupted. The years of silence were punctuated by moments of false hope. A sighting here, a potential lead there, each one a cruel reminder of the void left in Emily's wake. The police, overwhelmed and understaffed, had relegated the case to the cold files, a fact that stung Tom and Emily's family like salt in a wound. Despite this, Tom never gave up. He started an online forum dedicated to solving cold cases, hoping that the collective power of the internet might achieve what traditional methods had not. He connected with other families, sharing stories and strategies, the digital age offering a new avenue for hope. And now, as Harris stood on the precipice of a potential breakthrough, the weight of those silent years pressed heavily upon him. The name he had found was like a key, and he was determined to unlock the truth that had eluded them all for so long. The meeting with Martinez was set, and as Harris drifted off to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The silence that had hung over the town like a shroud was about to be pierced, and the truth, whatever form it took, was ready to step into the light. The anticipation gnawed at Harris like an insistent whisper, refusing to be ignored. As he prepared for the meeting with Martinez, he reflected on the years that had slipped through their fingers. Time had not been kind to Tom or Emily's family. The world had spun on, indifferent to their suffering. Tom had aged beyond his years. Lines of worry etched his once youthful face, and his eyes, though still sharp, bore the weight of countless sleepless nights. He had become a fixture at town meetings, a constant advocate for the forgotten, relentless in his pursuit of justice for Emily. His appeals often fell on deaf ears, but he persisted, driven by a love that defied the passage of time. Meanwhile, Emily's family had struggled to hold on to hope. Her parents, once vibrant and full of life, had retreated into themselves. They rarely spoke of Emily now, as if uttering her name might summon the pain afresh. Yet, in their home, her presence lingered. Photographs lined the mantel, her bedroom preserved as if she might return at any moment. The internet became their lifeline, a place where Tom and the family could channel their grief into action. The forum grew, attracting amateur sleuths and those who felt the sting of unresolved loss. Stories were shared, theories debated, and each new piece of information was dissected with the fervor of those desperate for closure. Despite their efforts, the leads were few and far between. Every promising tip seemed to dissolve under scrutiny, leaving them with more questions than answers. The police, constrained by resources and new cases, had little to offer. It was as if Emily had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. In the town, Emily's disappearance became a part of its folklore. New generations grew up hearing her story, a cautionary tale of innocence lost. The community, once galvanized by her case, had moved forward, their lives filled with new challenges and triumphs. Yet, beneath the surface, Emily's absence was a wound that had never truly healed. The day of the meeting dawned, and Harris felt a familiar mix of hope and fear. Martinez was a retired detective, known for his tenacity and unorthodox methods. He had taken an interest in the case, drawn by the mystery and the promise of solving what others had deemed unsolvable. His reputation for uncovering the truth was well earned, and Harris hoped that together they might finally unravel the threads of Emily's disappearance. As Harris arrived at the agreed-upon cafe, he spotted Martinez sitting in a corner booth, a stack of files spread before him. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of possibility pressing down on them both. Harris slid into the seat opposite, his heart pounding with the gravity of the moment. Martinez looked up, his eyes piercing and full of determination. They exchanged a brief nod, an unspoken agreement that this was more than just another meeting. Martinez leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "I've been reviewing the files, and there's something here, Harris, something everyone else missed. I think we're closer than ever to finding out what really happened to Emily." Harris's pulse quickened. The years of silence, of doubt and despair, were poised to give way to something new. The truth, long buried and obscured, was within reach. But with each step closer, the shadows of the past loomed larger, threatening to obscure the path forward. Martinez's eyes locked onto Harris's, a spark of determination igniting between them. They both knew that this was their moment, a chance to finally bring Emily home and lift the veil of silence that had shrouded their lives for far too long. As the cafe buzzed around them, Harris felt a surge of hope. The silence that had been their constant companion was fading, replaced by the promise of answers. Yet with each revelation, new questions emerged, casting doubt on everything they thought they knew. The meeting concluded, leaving Harris with a sense of urgency and a renewed resolve. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but the stakes had never been higher. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, he knew that the silence was about to be shattered, and with it the truth would finally come to light. But what that truth held remained a mystery, one that would challenge everything they believed. Harris walked briskly through the bustling streets, the city alive with the rhythm of a new day. Each step carried the weight of possibility, his mind racing with the implications of Martinez's words. Something everyone else missed. It was a phrase that echoed with both hope and caution, a reminder of the countless times they'd been led astray by false leads and empty promises. Yet, this time felt different. The air was charged with a sense of impending revelation, the kind that had eluded them for so long. As he made his way to the precinct, Harris couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something monumental. Inside, the precinct hummed with its usual activity, officers moving with purpose. Harris navigated the familiar corridors until he reached the conference room, where Martinez was already setting up. A whiteboard stood at the center, scattered with photographs and notes, a tapestry of clues that had yet to reveal their full story. Martinez greeted him with a nod, gesturing to a chair. Harris settled in, his eyes scanning the array of evidence that had become all too familiar over the years. "We've got a new angle," Martinez began, his voice steady and filled with a quiet confidence. "There's a company in California that's been making breakthroughs in genetic genealogy. They've agreed to take a look at the evidence we have." Harris's heart skipped a beat. Genetic genealogy, the cutting-edge technique that had solved cases long thought unsolvable. It was a glimmer of hope, a chance to breathe new life into the case that had defined so much of his existence. Martinez continued, his focus unwavering. "I've sent them everything we have, Emily's personal items, the hair and fibers from the scene. They're confident they can find something." The room seemed to hold its breath, the gravity of the moment palpable. Harris leaned back, absorbing the implications. A new door had been opened, one that could finally lead them to the answers they sought. But with that hope came the inevitable fear of what they might uncover. The truth, once revealed, would change everything. It was a double-edged sword, poised to cut through the silence, but also to reshape their understanding of the past. As Harris processed the information, the weight of the years settled upon him. The pain of Emily's absence, the questions left unanswered, the life they never got to share. It all hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of discovery. Martinez's voice broke through his thoughts, firm and determined. "We should have results in a few weeks. Until then, we keep digging. There's more to this than meets the eye, and I won't rest until we bring Emily home." Harris nodded, his resolve renewed. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the potential for both triumph and heartache. But for the first time in years, they had a tangible lead, a chance to shatter the silence and uncover the truth. As they returned to their work, the weight of the task ahead was tempered by a flicker of hope. The silence was fading, and with each passing day, the promise of answers grew stronger. Yet lurking beneath it all was the question that haunted Harris most. What would the truth reveal? The answer and the resolution of their long-standing quest lay just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. The journey was far from over, but Harris knew that they were closer than ever to finding the closure they so desperately needed. The following weeks were a whirlwind of anticipation and anxiety. Harris spent countless hours revisiting old case files, poring over every detail with renewed vigor. The promise of answers hung in the air, a beacon of hope guiding him through the fog of uncertainty. Yet, the question of what the truth might reveal lingered like a shadow, ever present and unnerving. Then one afternoon, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Harris received a call that would change everything. It was Martinez, her voice crackling with a mix of excitement and urgency. "They've found something," she announced, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. "The genetic genealogy team has identified a familial match. It's a distant relative, but it's a start." Harris felt his heart skip a beat. A match, a tangible link to someone who might hold the key to Emily's disappearance. The realization hit him with a force that left him momentarily breathless. Martinez continued, her voice steady and determined. "I've already reached out to the match. Her name is Laura Mitchell. She's agreed to meet with us tomorrow. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." Hope surged through Harris, a tide of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. For the first time in years, they had a real lead, a connection to the past that might finally unravel the mystery of Emily's disappearance. The next day, Harris and Martinez arrived at the cafe where they were set to meet Laura. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the potential for revelation. As they sat waiting, Harris couldn't help but wonder what this meeting would uncover. Was Laura aware of a family secret that had been buried for years, or was she just as clueless about the connection as they were? When Laura arrived, she was a whirlwind of nervous energy, her eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. She wasted no time, diving into the conversation with the eagerness of someone who had been waiting for answers her whole life. "I've always felt like there was something missing," Laura confessed, her voice tinged with a mixture of hope and fear. "My grandmother used to tell stories about a cousin who disappeared, but she never gave any details. I always thought it was just family folklore." Harris exchanged a glance with Martinez. This was it, the thread they needed to pull to unravel the tangled web of secrets that had ensnared them for so long. As they delved deeper into the conversation, Laura revealed more pieces of the puzzle. Family gatherings where whispered conversations were quickly hushed, childhood memories of overheard arguments about a forbidden love affair, and a long-lost letter hinting at dark secrets kept hidden for decades. With each revelation, the picture grew clearer, the connections more defined. Yet just as they seemed to be on the cusp of a breakthrough, Laura hesitated, her expression shifting to one of unease. "There's something else," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something my grandmother said on her deathbed. She mentioned a name, someone she called the key to it all." The room seemed to hold its breath as Laura uttered the name. It was a name that Harris and Martinez recognized instantly, a name that had surfaced in the investigation before, but was always dismissed as inconsequential. As the implications of Laura's revelation settled in, Harris felt a chill run down his spine. They were closer than ever to the truth, but with each new discovery came the chilling realization that the answers they sought were far more complex and dangerous than they had ever imagined. The journey was far from over, and as they left the cafe, a new question lingered in the air, begging to be answered. Who was the true key to it all, and what role had they played in Emily's disappearance? The chill of Laura's revelation still hung in the air as Harris and Martinez stepped out into the crisp night, their minds racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. The name Laura had whispered was not new to them. Daniel Chalmers, a figure who had hovered on the periphery of the investigation for years, but had always slipped through the cracks of scrutiny. Now, with Laura's grandmother's cryptic deathbed confession, he had suddenly become the linchpin in their search for answers. As they walked briskly to their car, Harris's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the forensics lab, its subject line bearing a glimmer of hope. New technology, old evidence. The lab had recently acquired cutting-edge genetic genealogy technology, a tool that had solved numerous cold cases by tracing familial DNA across untapped databases. Harris's hand trembled slightly with anticipation as he opened the message. The email detailed how this technology could be applied to the scant pieces of evidence collected from Emily's belongings, all but forgotten in dusty evidence boxes. Harris and Martinez exchanged a look of determination. This could be the breakthrough they desperately needed. The next morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Harris and Martinez found themselves back at the precinct, a renewed sense of purpose driving their every move. They immediately arranged for the old evidence to be sent to the lab, hopeful that this new method would breathe life into their dormant investigation. Meanwhile, Martinez made a call to an old colleague who had taken a fresh interest in the case. Detective Sarah Blake, known for her tenacity and innovative approach, was eager to lend her expertise. She had a reputation for seeing what others overlooked, and her involvement promised a fresh pair of eyes on this tangled web. As they waited for the results from the lab, Blake pored over the case files, her mind working like a finely tuned machine. She noticed patterns in witness statements that had been dismissed, connections between seemingly disparate events that hinted at a coordinated effort to conceal the truth. Days later, the lab results arrived, and the atmosphere in the precinct was electric with anticipation. The genetic genealogy had produced a hit, a distant relative of someone in the database, a match that circled back to none other than Daniel Chalmers. The revelation confirmed their suspicions. Chalmers was more deeply entwined in Emily's disappearance than anyone had realized. With this newfound evidence, Harris, Martinez, and Blake devised a plan to confront Chalmers, who had managed to evade the spotlight for so long. But as they prepared to make their move, a sense of unease settled over them. The stakes had never been higher, and the potential for danger loomed large. As they set off to track down Chalmers, a lingering question gnawed at them. Would he finally reveal the truth that had remained buried for 2 decades, or was there yet another layer to this mystery waiting to be uncovered? The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Each step brought them closer to unraveling the enigma that was Emily's disappearance. The cold grey morning seemed to mirror the tension in the room, as Harris, Martinez, and Blake gathered around a table, their eyes fixed on the newly acquired evidence. The distant relative's DNA match had opened a door they thought was sealed shut. But as they prepared to confront Daniel Chalmers, the reality of the situation settled heavily upon them. They were about to unmask the man who had walked in the shadows of their investigation for so long. Blake, her voice steady but laced with urgency, spoke first. "We need to approach this carefully. If Chalmers senses we're onto him, he might bolt or worse, destroy crucial evidence." Harris nodded, his brow furrowed with determination. "Agreed. We need to corner him in a way that leaves him no room to maneuver. This is our best shot." Martinez, ever the pragmatist, interjected. "We should have backup ready, just in case. If Chalmers is involved as we suspect, he might not go down without a fight." As they strategized, Blake's mind raced with the implications of their discovery. The DNA match was more than just a breakthrough. It was a lifeline to the truth that had eluded them for years. But even as they planned their next move, she couldn't shake the feeling that Chalmers was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Meanwhile, the precinct buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation. Officers moved with purpose, aware that each moment brought them closer to confronting a man who had slipped through the cracks of justice for far too long. As the team prepared to leave, Harris paused, his voice low but resolute. "This is it. Let's make sure we have everything we need to finally bring Emily home." With the weight of their mission pressing upon them, they set out to find Chalmers. The drive was tense, the silence punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the police radio. Each of them was lost in their own thoughts, contemplating the enormity of what lay ahead. Arriving at Chalmers' last known location, a modest suburban house shrouded in overgrown bushes. They parked a short distance away, watching for any signs of movement. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where secrets could linger unnoticed for years. Blake broke the silence, her voice a lifeline to the tension that gripped them. "Remember, we need to keep him talking. We can't let him shut us out or slip away." With a collective breath, they exited the vehicle, their steps synchronized by purpose and resolve. As they approached the house, a sense of foreboding settled over them, a reminder that the path to justice was rarely straightforward. The doorbell echoed ominously through the stillness, and they waited, hearts pounding, for Chalmers to answer. Each second felt stretched to eternity, the anticipation a tangible force around them. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing Chalmers, his expression guarded yet curious. Harris stepped forward, his voice steady but charged with the weight of their discovery. "Mr. Chalmers, we need to talk about Emily." Chalmers' eyes flickered with something unreadable, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Would he finally let the truth slip through the cracks of his facade, or was there another twist waiting to unravel the fragile threads of their case? Chalmers' eyes shifted, a brief hesitation that spoke volumes. The team held their ground, the air thick with the unspoken history between them and the man standing before them. Harris leaned in slightly, his voice calm but laced with an urgency that demanded attention. "We've been looking at everything again, Mr. Chalmers. New methods, new technology. We found something that might change everything." Chalmers' guarded demeanor faltered for a fraction of a second, a fleeting crack in his stoic facade. Blake seized the moment, her voice gentle yet probing. "We understand you may have questions too. Sometimes revisiting the past can bring closure." The word hung in the air, a promise and a threat. Chalmers shifted on his feet, glancing back into the dim interior of his home as if weighing whether to invite them into his world or shut the door on the past once more. Meanwhile, in the lab miles away, the hum of computers and the soft beeps of data processing filled the room. Technicians hovered over screens, their eyes flicking between lines of code and the results of the latest DNA analysis. It was here, amidst the glow of monitors, that the real breakthrough had begun to take shape. A forensic genealogist, Jenkins, leaned closer to her screen, her fingers dancing over the keyboard as she spoke to a colleague. "We've got a familial match. It's close, closer than anything we've had so far. This could be the connection we need." Her colleague nodded, excitement tempered by the gravity of their work. They'd been combing through every available database, cross-referencing a list of potential relatives with any known associates of Emily. It was a tedious task, but as each data point aligned, the image of the truth became clearer. Back at Chalmers' doorstep, Harris continued, his tone a mix of authority and understanding. "We know you were close to Emily. We found evidence that suggests a deeper connection, one that might hold the key to everything." Chalmers' eyes narrowed, suspicion mingling with something else, fear. "What evidence?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, barely above a whisper. Blake exchanged a glance with Harris before responding. "DNA, Mr. Chalmers. Science has come a long way since 2003. We can trace relationships now in ways that were unimaginable back then." The words landed heavily, each syllable a chisel against Chalmers' carefully constructed walls. His composure wavered, and for a moment the weight of years seemed to bow his shoulders. In the lab, Jenkins' voice broke through the tense atmosphere. "We're running the final checks now. If this pans out, we'll have our suspect by the end of the day." The team in the field remained poised, aware that any movement, any misstep could shatter the fragile progress they'd made. Harris took a deep breath, anchoring the moment with a resolve that had been honed over years of searching for answers. "We're close, Mr. Chalmers. We just need your help to put the final pieces together." Chalmers looked from Harris to Blake and back again, the battle within him playing out in the tightness of his jaw, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. What if he was ready to talk? What if the shadows he harbored were on the brink of exposure? And just as the pressure seemed insurmountable, Jenkins' voice resonated through the police radio clipped to Harris's belt, clear and unmistakable. "We've got it. The DNA match is confirmed. We have our suspect." The revelation rippled through the team, electrifying the air with a charged anticipation. As Chalmers stood before them, the weight of the truth poised to crash down, A single question lingered, more urgent than ever. Would this be the moment they finally uncovered the killer in plain sight? The room seemed to hold its breath, silence stretching taut, like a wire ready to snap. Harris, feeling the gravity of the moment, leaned in closer to Chalmers, his voice steady but urgent. "We need to know everything, Mr. Chalmers. This is your chance to help us bring justice for Emily." Chalmers' eyes darted, calculating, wrestling with the ghosts of his past. Blake watched him, sensing the internal struggle, the tipping point that could either shroud or illuminate the truth. "You don't understand," Chalmers finally said, his voice cracking under the weight of years unspoken. "I tried to let it go, to live my life, but she was always there." Harris exchanged a glance with Blake, the pieces starting to align in a harrowing pattern. They needed Chalmers to keep talking, to let the truth spill forth into the light. Jenkins' voice crackled through the radio again, a lifeline of information. "The DNA match points to someone in Emily's inner circle. We're narrowing it down, but we need confirmation from your end." Chalmers' hands trembled slightly, an involuntary betrayal of the storm within. He looked at the ground as if the answers were etched into the very tiles beneath his feet. "Emily and I, we were more than friends. We were involved. But it wasn't what you think. We kept it quiet," he confessed, his words a torrent now, unstoppable. Harris nodded, encouraging him to continue. They needed to know everything, every detail that could lead them to the truth. "Was there anyone who knew about you and Emily? Anyone who might have felt threatened by your relationship?" Harris pressed, his tone gentle yet insistent. Chalmers hesitated, a flicker of something dark crossing his face. "There was someone, her brother, Alex. He never liked me, thought I was a bad influence, that I was ruining her life." Blake leaned forward, sensing a breakthrough. Could Alex have had a motive to harm Emily? Could he have been hiding in plain sight all along? As if sensing their thoughts, Jenkins's voice interrupted, this time with a note of urgency. "Harris, you need to see this. We've cross-referenced the DNA, and it's tied to a male relative, Emily's brother." The revelation hung in the air, a heavy, inexorable truth that settled over them. Harris and Blake exchanged a look, the implications of the discovery sinking in. Chalmers, unaware of the radio transmission, continued speaking, the words tumbling out now. "Alex always said he'd do anything to protect Emily, to keep her safe from people like me." Blake's mind raced, connecting dots that had long seemed disparate and unrelated. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture that was as chilling as it was revelatory. Harris, feeling the urgency of the moment, turned to Chalmers, his voice firm. "We need to bring Alex in for questioning. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." Chalmers nodded, a resignation in his eyes as if he had been waiting for this moment, this reckoning, for years. "Do what you need to do," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. As the team moved with renewed purpose, the truth finally within their grasp, the question that hung in the air was no longer if they would uncover the killer, but when. And as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the city, the suspense remained, a palpable force that promised revelations yet to come. The team moved swiftly, the weight of the impending confrontation palpable in the air. Harris and Blake exchanged a glance, a silent understanding of the gravity of what lay ahead. They needed to approach Alex with caution, but also with the certainty that no stone would remain unturned. As they drove towards Alex's residence, memories of his public persona flashed in their minds. He was a respected teacher, known for his dedication to his students and his volunteer work at the local community center. A man admired for his patience and kindness, the very picture of a caring brother who had shouldered the loss of his sister with stoic grace. Yet beneath this veneer, there lay a darkness now exposed by the relentless march of truth. The car pulled up to the modest suburban home, the setting sun casting long shadows that seemed to stretch ominously across the lawn. Harris took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. They approached the door, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the quiet evening. When Alex answered, his face betrayed nothing but mild surprise. Harris spoke first, his voice steady. "We need to talk, Alex. It's about Emily." For a moment, Alex's composure faltered, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his eyes. He stepped aside, and they entered the living room, the cozy familiarity of the space a stark contrast to the tension brewing within. Blake, ever the diplomat, started gently. "We've uncovered new evidence, Alex. DNA evidence." A pause, the weight of the words hanging in the air like a suspended cord. Alex's expression hardened, a wall going up as he sensed the impending revelation. "The truth is," Harris continued, his voice firm but not unkind, "the evidence points to you. We need to understand what really happened to Emily." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then something in Alex seemed to break. His shoulders slumped slightly, the facade crumbling under the weight of years of secrets. "It was never supposed to happen like this," he began, his voice surprisingly calm. "I was trying to protect her. She was getting involved with dangerous people, making choices that would ruin her life." Harris and Blake listened intently, the pieces finally falling into place, the motive, the opportunity, all aligning in a chilling symmetry. "She was my sister," Alex continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I loved her, but she wouldn't listen. And then, that night, things got out of hand." The confession was both a relief and a heartbreak, the truth finally spoken after years of silence. Alex, the brother who had seemed to mourn his sister so deeply, had been her protector and her undoer. The arrest unfolded quietly, the gravity of the moment sinking into the walls of the house that had seen so much. As Alex was led away, the night settled in, a quiet witness to the unraveling of a life hidden in plain sight. Harris and Blake stood outside, the cool air a balm against the emotional storm they had just weathered. As they watched the car carrying Alex disappear down the street, a question lingered in their minds. What now for those left behind, for the family that must rebuild in the wake of such revelations? The end was near, but the aftermath would echo for years to come, a reminder of the darkness that can hide behind the most familiar of faces. As the taillights of the police car faded into the night, Harris and Blake exchanged a glance, the weight of their discovery settling heavily between them. They were seasoned investigators, yet the human element of this case, a brother who had loved too fiercely and lost himself in the process, left a mark that would not soon fade. The following morning dawned with a somber clarity. News of Alex's arrest spread quickly through the small town, the details of his confession casting a long shadow over the close-knit community. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, grappling with the realization that the man they had shared meals with, attended events with, had harbored such a dark secret. In the interrogation room, Alex sat, his hands folded on the table in front of him. The room was stark, the air tense with the anticipation of what was to come. Harris and Blake sat across from him, their expressions a blend of empathy and resolve. "Tell us what happened," Harris urged gently, knowing the importance of giving Alex the space to speak his truth. Alex took a deep breath, his eyes distant as he recalled the events of that fateful night. "Emily was spiraling," he began, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "She was involved with people who were dangerous, people who wouldn't think twice about hurting her. I tried to talk to her, to make her see reason, but she wouldn't listen. That night, we argued. It got heated, and I didn't mean for it to happen. I pushed her and she fell, she hit her head. The silence that followed was suffocating. A tear slid down Alex's cheek, and he didn't bother to wipe it away. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I could make it look like she disappeared, maybe it would be better than the truth. I thought I was protecting her, even in death." The confession, though painful, offered a sense of closure that had eluded Emily's family for so long. The legal proceedings moved swiftly, the evidence and Alex's admission leaving little room for doubt. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of sorrow and relief. Emily's parents sat silently, their faces a portrait of heartache and resilience. The judge's voice was steady as he delivered the sentence. Alex would serve 20 years for manslaughter, with the possibility of parole. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed through the hall, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. In the weeks that followed, the town slowly began to heal. Emily's family, though devastated by the loss of both children in different ways, found solace in the truth. They held a memorial for Emily, a celebration of her life rather than a mourning of her death, allowing the community to come together in remembrance. The case, once cold and seemingly unsolvable, now stood as a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of never giving up hope. For Harris and Blake, it was a reminder of why they did what they did, the pursuit of justice not just for the living, but for those who could no longer speak for themselves. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the story of Emily and Alex became a part of the town's history. A cautionary tale of love and its potential to turn dark when fear overshadows reason. Yet amidst the tragedy, there was light, a renewed sense of community and the resilience of the human spirit. In the end, justice was not just about punishment, but about remembrance. Emily's memory would live on, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of family bonds. The truth, though painful, had set them free, allowing them to move forward with a deeper understanding of love, loss, and the complexity of the human heart.